Betrayal can destroy you, or make you stronger. Like and subscribe for a raw, real look at love gone wrong, and the strength it takes to rebuild. Enjoy this story. The kitchen clock ticked way too loud. Sarah was late again, that awful new perfume of hers still lingering in the air like a cheap motel scent. It was 7:30, dinner was cold, and something inside me felt even colder. This distance we'd been drifting into lately, it wasn't like us. She used to tell me everything. 12 years. That's half my life. I remember the day we got married like it was yesterday. Now I felt like we were barely roommates. Her phone buzzed, the screen flashing for a second before it went dark on the table. I know I shouldn't. It's wrong. But God, the way she snatches that thing away whenever it rings, like I'm gonna pounce on it. The temptation was eating me alive. Then again, it's unlocked. Just sitting there, all my answers maybe one touch away. I could look. I glanced over my shoulder towards the hallway. Nothing. Inching my chair forward, I held my breath. All it would take is one swipe. Sarah would never know. I just want to know. Know what? My fingers brushed the cool glass. Then another buzz. And there it was, lit up on the screen. Can't wait to see you. And a freaking winky face. My breath punched out of me. No name, just that stupid emoji. But seeing it there, on her phone, my hand shook, and I dropped it like it was on fire. Sarah burst in the door then, a whirlwind of excuses. Traffic. Client problems. Yada yada. I just nodded, feeling sick. Later, the lights were out. She was asleep beside me, but I couldn't close my eyes. Can't wait to see you. Was this work? Did people use winky faces in professional emails? My mind raced. I should have listened to Jenna back then. She cornered me at the grocery store a few weeks ago, all wide eyes and nervous smiles. Mark, just keep an eye out, yeah? Sarah, well, she's always been flirtatious. It felt like a punch in the gut remembering that now. God, why was I so blind? The next day, I started noticing every little thing. The way Sarah lingered by the water cooler at work, that new lipstick always perfectly on. The way her eyes skittered away when I asked about her day, a question that used to fill an entire evening with laughter and stories. It wasn't just work keeping her late. And the worst part? That stupid little voice in my head saying, "It's nothing. You're making this up." My stomach clenched into a fist whenever I saw the hotel receipt. Date circled, hidden in her jewelry box. Was I going crazy? Was this all in my head? But that lingerie, tucked underneath her sweaters, she said it was a gift to herself. Sure, Sarah, sure. This can't be happening. We're perfect. Or at least, we were. The thought echoed in the silent house, mocking me. I was an idiot, a blind, trusting idiot. Now what? Play dumb? Hire someone to follow her? That felt sick, wrong. But not knowing was worse, like it was eating me alive from the inside out. I had to do something. My life had apparently become some B-grade detective movie. I was tailing my own wife, for God's sake. Every time her car pulled out of the driveway, I was 2 minutes behind, keeping a safe distance, heart pounding like I was the one doing something wrong. It was pathetic, and deep down I knew it. But I couldn't stop. The paranoia was a full-time job now. The way she'd hum a stupid little tune while fixing breakfast, so oblivious, it made my skin crawl. And the clothes. Every morning it was like a fashion show, a new outfit, each one tighter than the last. I tried to convince myself it was just a confidence boost, but the pit in my stomach disagreed. Then there was Carl in accounting. I bumped right into him at the coffee shop where Sarah supposedly had all these work lunches. Dude was shifty-eyed, couldn't even meet my gaze. Yeah, Sarah, she's great, real asset to the company. But when I casually asked if he ever joined her for these client meetings, he practically choked on his latte, mumbling something about spreadsheets. That night, I waited until Sarah was asleep. Her company laptop glowed softly on the nightstand. The guilt hit me, but the desperation was stronger. I knew her stupid password, our anniversary backwards. Ridiculously easy. A few frantic clicks and I was in her email. Nothing. Expense reports. Boring meeting notes. It was maddening. Did she cover her tracks this well, or was I going insane? Sarah caught me a few days later, just hovering over her shoulder as she scrolled through her phone. She whirled around, snatching it back. What the hell, Mark? Are you spying on me now? Her eyes were blazing. I just mumbled some lame excuse about the charger, slinking away like a kicked dog. She was getting sloppy, but so was I. My online searches had taken a dark turn. PIs, hidden cameras, all kinds of crap I never dreamed I'd look into. And Jenna kept calling. That woman was relentless. Listen, Mark. I didn't want to badmouth your wife. But back in college, Sarah. Well, let's just say she liked attention. It ate away at me, whispering that maybe Sarah was the same person now, just better at hiding it. It was like all the cracks in my perfect little world were widening. Then it happened, the smoking gun. While she was in the shower, tucked in her purse was a whole other phone. Old thing, cracked screen, no name in the contacts, just texts. And holy hell, those texts. It wasn't just flirting, it was graphic, filthy stuff, promises that made me sick. I couldn't breathe, the world spinning. Sarah, my Sarah. Clutching that burner phone felt like holding a grenade. This was it. No more sneaking around, no more excuses. There could be only one ending to this nightmare. The confrontation was brutal. I didn't even try to hide the anger, the disgust. 12 years of love, trust, whatever we had, just shattered. Sarah was stone-faced. Didn't even fake tears. It's not what you think, Mark. What the hell else could it be? The texts, her sneaking around. It was all there in black and white. He's just a friend, we talk, she insisted, icy calm. An emotional thing, it doesn't mean anything. Her words felt like slaps. Emotional thing? Was I just a paycheck and a warm body to her? Then, the begging started. Pitiful tears, promises she'd change. The whole 9 yards. We can make it through this, Mark. I don't want to lose you. My head spun. Part of me wanted to toss her out that minute, but another part, still stupid with love I guess, wondered, could we really fix this? We ended up in that sterile therapist's office, sitting across from each other like strangers. Dr. What's-Her-Face seemed so optimistic. Communication is key, she chirped. Easy for her to say, she didn't find those texts. Sarah played the reformed wife perfectly. All apologies and sweet glances my way when Dr. Know-It-All was watching. I wanted to believe it. Clung to the hope that maybe this hell was temporary. But something felt wrong. It was in the way Sarah smirked when she thought I wasn't looking. The way her hand twitched at that mention of overtime at work. It was a game to her. And I was the fool on the playing field. I started tailing her again. Stupid, maybe, but I couldn't stop. One Friday afternoon, she was all business suit and apologetic kisses before heading out for some urgent client meeting. I followed, a knot in my gut. And there she was, parked in a cafe lot, giggling as some guy I'd never seen before kissed her on the cheek. Not the burner phone dude, someone new. The world tilted sideways. I didn't explode, no scene in a parking lot. I just went home and waited, the burner phone evidence burning a hole in my pocket. That night, the lies just spilled out of her, more excuses, more empty promises. It was Jenna's call that broke what was left of me. Mark, you have to understand, this is her pattern. There were others before me, even during college. One-night stands, flings, whatever she could get. Sarah the heartbreaker. Sarah the liar. Looking at her across the table, I realized with chilling clarity, I never really knew her at all. The counseling was a sham, a way to keep me on a leash while she played her games. She didn't love me. Hell, I wasn't even sure she was capable of love, just craving that next conquest, that next hit of attention. A parasite in a designer dress. The anger bubbled up inside me, but this time, it wasn't that blinding rage. It was cold, precise fury. Sarah would pay for what she'd done. The rage was my fuel, burning away the numbness, keeping me moving. There was always another file to check, another phone number to trace, always something else to do to keep from crumbling apart completely. Sleep? An optional luxury. My house became a war room, financial documents spread across the table, Sarah's discarded receipts like evidence in some twisted crime scene. Every day, it seemed, another piece fell into place thanks to that shark of a PI I hired. The burner phone guy was small potatoes compared to her big fish, her boss, of all people. Mr. Family Man, with the cookie-cutter wife and the pristine reputation, just as slimy as Sarah. Maybe worse. The idea of them together. God, it made me want to be sick. Then the money trail came back. Her sudden splurges weren't just a confidence boost, it was cold, calculated steps. Fancy dinners, a secret apartment under a fake name, a safety deposit box I didn't know existed. All funded with money skimmed straight from her company. She was getting away with theft on top of everything else. My lawyer had a field day with it, the grim smile of a hunter finally cornering prey. We can make her bleed, Mark. Protect yourself, get what you're owed. He was so clinical, but damn it, I needed that. I spent hours in his office, poring over bank statements and property records, a crash course in financial betrayal. Sarah's name signed on every document was like acid in my veins. That's when the other victims started to emerge. Not just the cheating spouses, but the companies she'd half scammed on her way up the ladder. It was a pattern older than our marriage. And with Sarah, it was never about need, it was the thrill of the game, of getting away with it. Jenna became my lifeline then. I'd always thought she was exaggerating, but no. Sarah had used Jenna to get close to her boyfriend back in the day, then swooped in for the kill, relishing the destruction. Power move, that's how Sarah saw it, Jenna told me, choking back tears. Now, there was steel in Jenna's tone. We were an unlikely alliance born out of misery, but hey, misery needed company. Every twisted revelation deepened my disgust. But one thing made me hesitate, Mr. Family Man's family. Pictures from the PI, kids playing in the garden, a wife with that clueless, happy smile, mirroring the idiot husband I used to be. I knew, if the bomb dropped, it'd shatter their lives as cleanly as it had mine. And for what? Would it stop Sarah, or would she slither away, only to destroy someone else? There had to be a better way. A smarter way. Sarah's downfall had to be absolute, a punishment fitting for a lifetime of lies. The moment I laid out the plan with my lawyer, something shifted inside me. The hunted feeling was gone, replaced with a predator's focus. I even began to sleep again, my dreams twisted replays of Sarah's downfall. It was sick, probably, but who cared? She brought me to this. Back in our house, I became an actor. There were calculated smiles when she flitted in late with that same stupid perfume choking the air. Feigned interest in her rambling excuses about work. The concerned but forgiving husband act. It wasn't hard once I realized how predictable Sarah was. I knew her patterns, almost more than she knew them herself. That's the thing about people like her. They think they're the smartest ones in the room, but really, they're trapped on a hamster wheel of their own lies. The carelessness was almost laughable at first. A receipt tucked in her purse, a text buzzing late at night deleted almost too quickly. Then, the escalation. Lingerie tossed carelessly across the bed she thought I wouldn't notice, hotel keycards peeking out from her makeup bag. Was she daring me to catch her? Or had she become so arrogant she didn't care anymore? I played dumb, letting the noose tighten ever so slowly. My next move was a gamble, and a low one at that. But there was a vengeful satisfaction in stooping to her level. Mrs. Family Man got a neat little typed letter. No accusations, just questions. Your husband has been working such long hours lately, bless his heart. You must miss him so. Just enough to plant that seed of paranoia. Let her do the dirty work of destroying her perfect marriage. It was petty, but damn it felt good. The journal became my obsession. Every sighting, every odd transaction, it all got logged. Sarah in that cafe parking lot again. Mr. Family Man sneaking an afternoon meeting at a hotel suspiciously far from the office. Their lies were becoming my evidence. Then the final straw, neatly packed suitcases hidden in the spare room closet. My name scrawled on a post-it next to a forwarding address form. Planning her escape, no doubt funded by the money she'd stolen. My surprise business trip was going to be anything but. Each tick of the clock felt like a victory march. Sarah was trapped. All her careful plans, the manipulations, the lies. They were about to fall apart so spectacularly, it would make her dizzy. The image of her face, that smug mask finally cracking, was what kept me going. Revenge, cold and precise, was going to taste exceptionally sweet. My flight back should have been triumphant. Instead, a dull dread gnawed at the edges of my calm. This was it. Playing the long game had ended, and now came the messy, ugly reality of it all. Sarah, the fallout, the sheer pain it would cause, it felt almost too big to comprehend. Yet, the prospect of it ending, of Sarah gone from my life forever, sparked a sliver of relief, buried deep beneath the anger. The PI had kept me informed. Sarah's company was in chaos following my anonymous tip and the stack of damning evidence I'd gift wrapped for them. Mr. Family Man's house of cards had crumbled even faster. His wife, surprisingly fierce when it came to protecting her kids, had apparently delivered a wrath of biblical proportions. Now, according to the PI's photos, my soon-to-be ex was frantically packing, her paramour dumped amidst the chaos of their destroyed affair. Walking into that house, my house, felt odd, like playing a role I'd rehearsed 100 times in my head. Sarah was there, in the kitchen I now hated. No tears, no apologies, just that icy fury I'd come to recognize so well. "You son of a," was all she could manage, her voice shaking. The words hung in the air, a testament to her shock. The fight was gone from her. What came next was almost robotic. I laid out the choices, my tone as cold as the lawyer I'd become: face justice and complete ruin, or disappear and face only partial ruin. She almost laughed then, a bitter, broken sound. "And what makes you think I won't expose you, spying on me, destroying my life?" It was pure Sarah, grasping at any way to regain control. "Because, my dear," I gestured to the stack of files on the table, "the truth is a powerful weapon. And you, Sarah, you're a very, very bad liar." She picked a handbag, cramming belongings with trembling hands, a mask of defiance crumbling to reveal the scared, petty person beneath. No goodbyes, no drama. Just the slamming of the door that echoed in the newly empty space. The calls started the next day. Friends, taking sides. Some, full of outrage on Sarah's behalf. Others surprisingly, hesitantly, offering support. "We always knew something wasn't right," they'd whisper, proving gossip travels faster than any private detective. Then there was Jenna, not sure where she stood now that her revenge was somewhat achieved. Tentative at first, the calls became longer, the laughter returning. Our shared trauma forged a bond stronger than any romance we'd fleetingly had. Sarah had vanished like she'd never existed. The divorce was a brutal financial bloodbath, but with my lawyer now a ruthless shark, I emerged relatively unscathed. The rumors eventually died down, the juiciest scandals replaced by newer, fresher ones. And I learned to live in the quiet of a life stripped bare by a woman who never truly saw me. But it was okay. Because for the first time in a long while, I finally saw myself. I was in the grocery store, of all places, when I saw her. There, amidst the bland produce aisle, the woman who'd shattered my life looked nothing like the Sarah I knew. Expensive clothes reduced to sale rack finds. Hair once perfectly styled now hung limp. And the eyes, those defiant, calculating eyes, now held a haunted emptiness I'd never seen before. Something clenched inside me. A mix of pity and a lingering, bitter triumph. She saw me too, hesitation flickering across her worn features before she quickly looked away. The urge to flee was strong, but a strange fascination held me rooted. She was paying for a single apple, a few measly packs of ramen. Sarah, the queen of gourmet takeout, reduced to this. "Mark," her voice barely above a whisper, cracked with a vulnerability that was almost more jarring than her old arrogance. We stood there, trapped in this fluorescent purgatory, the ghost of our history hanging heavy in the air. "Sarah," I managed to say, my voice surprisingly even. "What do you say to the person who destroyed you? Sorry isn't enough, yet anything else felt false." There was no apology, not that I expected one. Just a mumbled, I never meant to hurt you." Her eyes, once so defiant, couldn't quite meet mine. Was that regret? Shame? Or simply the desperation of a woman who had burned every last bridge? "But you did, Sarah," I replied, surprised by the calmness in my own voice. "You chose this." In that moment, I finally understood. She chose the lies, the thrill of the game, always believing she was invincible, that she'd never be caught. Her destruction wasn't my doing, it was the consequence of her own choices. We left it at that. No dramatic shouting match, no tears. Just two strangers passing each other amidst the mundane bustle of everyday life. Did I feel like a hero? No. There were no winners in this mess. The encounter, brief as it was, left me unsettled. Turns out, even the deepest wounds leave scars. I'd gone to therapy, done all the healing, but the damage was woven into me. Trust didn't come easy. Every time Jenna smiled that beautiful, genuine smile, a dark whisper asked if this, too, could be a lie. Yet, there was a strength in me now I didn't recognize. A cautious optimism blooming alongside the scars. I'd contacted Mr. Family Man's ex-wife, Mrs. Perfect, I used to call her. Turns out, she wasn't as oblivious as I thought. There was a weary understanding between us now, a sisterhood forged in the fires of betrayal. And then, an idea began to form. It was crazy at first, just a glimmer. Could the pain, the utter messiness of what I'd endured, be used for something good? That's when the support group started. Just a few of us at first, each with our own story of love warped into betrayal. It wasn't about revenge, or even self-pity. It was about finding strength in the broken places, rebuilding a life shattered from the inside out. Somehow, the mess I'd survived had become my way to heal others. Word spread. People found their way to our little group. My story became their cautionary tale. A testament to the destruction infidelity wreaks, but also a promise that there was a way back from the abyss. I wasn't an expert, just one man who had been through hell. And that, it seemed, was enough. It was far from a perfect ending, but it was an ending built on a strength forged in the ashes of betrayal. News travels fast in small towns, and apparently, even the juiciest scandals eventually make their way home. Sarah's parents had disowned her, or that's what Jenna told me in one of her increasingly frequent calls. Can you blame them? She'd sighed, a mix of pity and bitterness in her voice. She humiliated them. I wasn't sure what to feel. Sarah's family had never been warm, but they didn't deserve this kind of public downfall. Then again, neither did I. Turns out, some folks back where I grew up viewed my whole situation differently. That Mark took care of business, I'd overhear whispers at the hardware store. It made my skin crawl. Like they saw her as the prey and me as the hunter who'd bagged a trophy. Sure, there was an undercurrent of small-town gossip, but amidst the sordid details there was also a sliver of grudging respect. Then came the bombshell nobody saw coming. Mr. Family Man, cornered and desperate, decided to turn the tables on Sarah. Somehow, the narrative emerged that she'd seduced him, manipulated him. A weak, innocent man led astray by a conniving temptress. The sheer audacity of it made me laugh at first, a bitter bark of disbelief. But the story gained traction. His wife, once so supportive, was now oddly silent. Fury ignited inside of me. This was all too familiar. Sarah's go-to move, spinelessly throwing others under the bus to save her own skin. I'd taken the high road, let karma do her bit, and it still wasn't enough. It was one thing to wreck my life, but to drag others down to escape her own mess? This wouldn't stand. Mrs. Perfect, Sarah's nemesis turned ally, was surprisingly hesitant at first. It'll get messy, Mark, for everyone. But there was a steeliness beneath her weariness now. This wasn't about revenge for her, but about preventing some other woman from falling victim, the way she and I both had. We meticulously put together our counterattack, dates, emails, proof of their collusion in both the affair and the embezzlement scheme. The town newspaper, usually filled with reports of bake sales and lost dogs, ran our story. It was explosive. Mr. Family Man's flimsy facade crumbled beyond repair. His career imploded. Social circles banished him. His picture next to Sarah's, both labeled as manipulators and frauds, was a brutal, yet satisfying, kind of justice. Life with Jenna was finding a tentative rhythm. We moved slowly, each haunted by our pasts. Her breezy confidence masked a vulnerability that mirrored my own. It was during a stupid rom-com, of all things, that it happened, my first full-blown panic attack. The laughter, the happy ending on the screen. It all morphed into Sarah's mocking smirk, leaving me gasping for breath, heart pounding. Jenna held me while I shook, not a flicker of judgment in her eyes. We both got scars, Mark, she whispered later, as I calmed enough to feel the shame wash over me. But scars don't have to define us. The nightmares started soon after. Sarah, her familiar perfume suffocating me, whispering accusations and threats while I lay helpless. My therapist, bless her patient heart, called it PTSD. Just another label for the invisible wounds I carried. The support group helped, reminding me I wasn't alone in this. But some nights, the echoes of Sarah's betrayal felt too loud to let me heal. I started to question everything. Had I overreacted? Could I have handled it better? The fact that these doubts crept into my strongest moments, that was the most insidious twist in this whole ugly mess. Sarah had gotten into my head in a way no fistfight ever could have. And sometimes, that scared me more than any ruined marriage ever had. Time, I realized, wasn't the magic cure all people promised. A year had passed, wounds had scarred over, but the ache remained. Kinda like an old sports injury, fine most days, but a dull throb lingered with a change in weather. I'd learned to live with it, to function. Life with Jenna was good, surprisingly good. It was a cautious kind of happiness, a slow unfolding of trust built from the ashes of what we'd both endured. Then the letter came. Return address, a P.O. box in some town I'd never heard of. Sarah's handwriting, that loopy scrawl I hadn't seen in what felt like a lifetime, stared up at me accusingly. I should have tossed it into the fireplace unopened. But the gnawing curiosity, that same damn flaw that got me into this whole mess, was too strong. It was a mess of a letter, page after rambling page. No real apology, just excuses laced with self-pity. Turns out, running from your problems doesn't automatically grant a fresh start. She was desperate, hinting at financial struggles, a dead-end job, and the loneliness of exile. It should have felt satisfying. Her lies had caught up to her, leaving her a shadow of the woman I once loved. Yet, there was no triumph in it, only a dull hollowness. After days of agonizing, I wrote back. Not the scathing takedown she probably expected. Just a few lines, coldly polite. Your choices, your consequences. I wish you a life far from here, where you cannot cause any more pain. It was the closest thing to forgiveness I could manage, more for my sake than hers. The support group became my unexpected salvation. It felt wrong at first, me dishing out advice like some relationship guru when my own heart was still a damn patchwork mess. But there was power in shared brokenness, a strength forged in the honesty no therapist's office could offer. Their stories, so similar yet achingly unique, mirrored my own journey back into the light. Word reached me about Mr. Family Man. He'd vanished too, retreating into a fortress of bitterness and self-destruction. My first instinct was a flicker of grim satisfaction. He deserved it. Yet, I also felt a strange pang of understanding. Was it? Maybe because I'd seen that darkness inside of myself, that potential for ruin we all carry if the wrong choices pile up. Jenna caught me staring at the fireplace one cold winter night, lost in thoughts I couldn't quite untangle. It's complicated, isn't it? She said softly. Ending a chapter doesn't mean the book is fully closed. She was right. Maybe that was the hardest lesson of all. There was no neat ending to this mess. Sarah and the man she destroyed, they were ghosts now, reminders of the damage one person's recklessness can create. It was up to me, to us, to ensure those ghosts didn't dim the new life we were slowly, carefully building together. Did you hear about Sarah? Apparently, she resurfaced in Texas, was it? Working in a diner or something. The voice chirped on, oblivious to the way the ground tilted beneath my feet. 5 years. A marriage, a whole new life with Jenna, and that damn name could still cut through me like a shard of glass. The party buzzed on, oblivious. It was a fundraiser for some charity Jenna was passionate about, full of wealthy, well-meaning people I'd never fully fit in with. My smile felt brittle as I made polite conversation, the old familiar panic clawing at my insides. Breathe, Mark, just breathe. Sarah, a waitress in Texas? It was almost laughably pathetic. Yet, what pricked at me wasn't pity, it was the lingering fury that her failure wasn't somehow more spectacular. Like I still wanted her to suffer the way she'd made me suffer. Across the room, I caught Jenna's eye. Just a flicker of concern beneath her perfect hostess mask before she turned back to her guests. She understood, knew that even amidst this happy life we'd built, there'd always be a part of me stuck in that broken past. Mark? Her voice was soft as we stood on the balcony later that night, the city lights a glittering backdrop. You okay? Yeah, I sighed, the lie catching in my throat. Just tired, I guess. Couldn't tell her about the memories flooding back. Sarah's laugh, that mocking glint in her eye, the stifling scent of her perfume. We stood in companionable silence, a closeness born from shared scars that needed no words. Sleep was a restless battle. Amidst the twisted dreams, a sudden, unsettling urge jolted me awake. I padded to my office, the box tucked away in the back of my desk drawer calling to me like an old wound. There it was. The letter, ink faded on the cheap paper. Sarah's words, a jumble of self-pity and blame, stared back accusingly. Her handwriting, once so sure, now held a tremor, a crack mirroring her shattered life. With shaking hands, I struck a match. The paper curled and blackened, the smell of burning oddly comforting. Ashes fluttered into the night like fragments of a nightmare finally fading. It wasn't the grand gesture I'd imagined, not some cleansing burst of anger. It was a quiet act of letting go. Back in bed, Jenna was softly snoring, her face peaceful with a trust I'd never take for granted. Imperfect, cautious as our love was, it was mine. I closed my eyes, images of Sarah fading against the warmth of the woman beside me. Later, I'd dream of open skies and laughter, the ghosts of my past silent at last. Maybe this was what healing actually felt like, not a forgetting, but a moving forward. The scars were part of me, a reminder of the man I'd been, and more importantly, the one I'd become.